Benihana grip video, take one. Okay, a couple of things. First of all, you're going to have a tail end of the grip like this. It may or may not have these labels on it. For practical purposes, I will leave the labels on, but for you, I'm going to take them off, and I'll show you how I do that. I got heat gun right there, Wagner heat gun. Nothing special. You don't have to buy a Gulf Works only heat gun. You can get any of these. They're really inexpensive at Home Depot, Harbor Freight, any of those things. But I like using this better. What I do is I heat up the labels that are on there. Bear with me for a second. Heat gun gets very hot, be careful. So then once I've heated it up, the thermal aspect of the adhesive changes and you can peel them right off. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. With your kit, you probably got a tape remover. And I do the same thing if I'm taking regular tape off, grip tape, like an old grip. I use a hot air gun. I don't use anything else. For one, it's really clean. You don't have all the mess. For two, the stripping tools are pretty much only used on steel shafts. And the reason for that is obviously they're very sharp on the end. This one's having some problems. We'll give it another shot. Heat it up good. Hot. And just take it off. I just take it with my nail. But those grip tape tools, which I'll show you mine in a minute, which by the way are pretty easy to make if you ever need to make one. Get this all off. There we go. So that becomes a pretty clean example of the shaft. Garbage away. Now the grip tape tool that you probably got is something like this. And basically you can make it, I'll show you at a later time, but you can make one if you want to. And a lot of the tools I've made myself instead of bought them because it was just easier. But the trouble with this is it's very, very sharp on the edge and you keep resharpening it on a grinder wheel. And one of the problems with a graphite shaft you never want to do is because it will etch the shaft. And today's shafts are so thin and so fragile that a little etch like that will cause a crack when you're playing it. And once you crack it, for the most part, depending on where the crack is, it's pretty much garbage time for the shaft. So let me get this out of the way. Now another thing I do is I like to get this really clean. So the first thing I do is, this is my mineral spirit bottle. I just use a regular spray bottle and it's got mineral spirits that you can buy at Home Depot. You can buy them at Walmart. And I use this because it's just handy when I do a lot of grips. Probably with your kit, they gave you like a little squeeze bottle thing. And the little squeeze bottle thing is okay, but I think you use a lot more mineral spirits. Now, you know the catch tray that you have with your setup. I'm going to do this right over the catch tray, but it primarily is to recapture some of the mineral spirits, which you can then filter through a piece of paper towel and use again. So in the end, I've got a very clean shaft. No grip tape, nothing. Wipe it down a little bit and we'll move on to the next prospect. Okay, I'm gonna put that down for a second. By the way, this one I had just put a brand new tip on, a brand new adapter tip. So I gotta put a grip on it. Okay, that's it. This is a typical grip, a Golf Pride grip. Usually comes with a little wrap on the end. You know, pretty standard. They're all the same. I like to do that so that I can take that off quickly. Once again, you know, a lot of times I'm doing 20 or 30 grips at a time, so it's a little more complicated to be just taking it off conventionally. So the next thing is, and this roll's getting kind of down, is I'll have my double-sided tape, which is about 2 inches in diameter. You don't really, they have thinner ones, but you don't want thinner ones. And I'll show you why when I do this. I've got a very different clamping system than you have because I made it and I use it for multiple things. But now I sent you a quick note or message. Be very careful with your clamp, which is a cam clamp. Be very careful with any kind of clamp. These new shafts are very low gram weight and very thin wall. If you go cranking it down, you will crack it. And once again, you crack it and the shaft is good for garbage. So you don't really need to be that clamped down with it. You only need to hold it. That's it. The rest is pretty straightforward. Now, one of the things I'm going to do with this one is this guy wants the logo to be oriented to the position of the shaft that he wanted. So I will do a little mark opposite the standard. I'll do a little mark like right there. That's pretty good. And the other thing you can do, which is very easy if you're regripping, this happens to be a new head, so that's why I'm going to take this screw out of it. I happen to have a couple of heads floating around here. This happens to be a TaylorMade fitting. This is a TaylorMade, what is it? QI10 5-wood Tour. So it's always easier to put the grip on if you already have the head back on. Pretty straightforward. I don't need to crank it down or anything, but it shows me the alignment of the grip to the face of the club for the shaft position that I want. So I could do that very easily. And then I put this up here and I align it in such a way so that it's going to be the correct position for playing position for the head and the shaft. A little bit more. Excuse me. I want to make sure it's secured. Okay, so put that back for the time being. You'll notice I got lots of tools. And let me reposition this camera really quick so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of ways that I do this. One is I take the grip, and what you don't want ever is to put too little or too much tape on. Too much tape obviously is a mess that you got to clean up, and too little tends not to hold the bottom of the grip right here, and going in and out of the bag, the grip will rip. So what I do is, knowing that I don't want to tape the full length, is I will make a little mark with a contrasting Sharpie about, actually right where that line is, but about 1/4 to 1/2 inch from the end of the grip once I have it up next to the shaft. And the reason that I do that is that way I know where to put my tape. So I take my tape. This is going to be different for you. You have a dispenser. I don't really like tape dispensers because they tend to keep some of the tape exposed, and thereby the adhesive on the tape dries out. So what I do very simply is I go right like this, right to there, to the end of the thing. I put my hand on it like that. Now, at the very end, from the end of the butt of the shaft, I leave about an inch more tape on and then cut it at that inch. And then what I will be doing next is, once again, maybe different for you, but what I try to do is I try to put this down very, very carefully with my hand so that it's nice and smooth. And by rubbing it a little, the generated heat from your hand and the friction tends to make the tape stick very well. And if you've cleaned the shaft, for instance, you will have a perfect tape, no air bubbles, no nothing in it. Okay? So the next thing that I do is I peel back the backing on the tape, which is right there. And by peeling back the backing, now I'm exposing the other adhesive side of the tape because it's a two-sided tape. This particular guy, I'm just going to put one tape on, but if you were going to do multiple layers, which some guys like, you can use a backing tape for the bottom layers, but this one always has to be the one that comes in contact with the grip. I then take my little scissors, and right down here, I kind of cut about 1/4 of an inch out on the end of the grip, and I fold the tape in. Now I've got this little deal right here. Now this is a pro tip. What I do then is I take the little piece of tape that's on the end and I do a little saddle piece over the end. This protects the shaft a lot. On steel shafts in particular, this is really important because moisture gets inside the shafts, and although the outside of the shaft is chromed, the inside of the shaft is raw metal. And there's a lot that if you don't seal the end of this, that what happens is it'll get moisture in there just from normal play, rain, whatever you want to think of it. And it rusts the inside and ultimately will rust down by the head. So with that, I'm pretty much set on doing that. So the next thing that I do is I soak a little bit. Sometimes juicier is a little better. I soak the tape a little bit. And then I do another pro move, which is I put my finger over the hole at the bottom. I put the nozzle in this side and I give it a couple pumps. Now what I'm doing there is I'm pre-wetting the inside of the grip. As you can see, everything that I miss goes right down into my collection thing. And then for alignment, I know exactly what I want to align here, because I'm looking at the head on the other end. So I slide this down. I make sure it's all aligned. You've got probably, once you put a grip on, typically, you've got probably 4 or 5 minutes that you can work it any way you want if you need to move it for any reason. Typically, most grips, other than putter grips, within 20 minutes, they're completely dry and you don't have to worry about them. So then I take a little paper towel or rag. I make sure if there's any adhesive that came off the end that I'm all cleaned up. Looks like I am. Now I'm going to take it out of the station and I'm going to take it and I'm going to give it a good on the ground like that. I'm going to now take this head off because this head belongs to somebody else. And once I take the head off, that shaft is done. So you can see that depending on how you set it up, you can move very quickly through it. I would say the key aspects are I'm going to just sit this down and let it dry. I would say the key aspects are, in general, making sure the shaft is really clean, okay? Making sure that when you put the tape on, that you're cutting it to a good length, not too long and not too short, and leaving some on the back end for those little pro tips I gave you. And then once you put some mineral spirits on the tape, when it's ready to go, you can put some inside the grip also and slosh it around a little bit to get it wet. If the two are really juicy, the grip slides on no problem. If you have to force the grip, there's a problem. So in general, that's gripping 101, my friend.